There is a man sitting alone in a room at 3 in the morning. His face is illuminated only by the cold light of a screen. His wife sleeps in the next room. His children dream peacefully down the hall. And yet here he sits, caught in a cycle he has promised himself, for the 947th time, that he will break tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes. This is not a story about weakness. This is not a story about moral failure. This is a story about a fundamental misunderstanding so profound, so deeply embedded in how we approach this struggle, that it sabotages recovery before it even begins. And if you are reading this, there is a significant chance you are making the exact same mistake right now. The ancient Japanese had a concept called tsukumogami, the idea that objects, when neglected or misused for long enough, develop a spirit of their own. They become possessed, not by demons, but by the energy of our own mishandling. The relationship becomes corrupted, and what was once a tool becomes a master. This is closer to the truth of pornography addiction than anything modern psychology has offered. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me begin where all truth begins, in the uncomfortable space between what we believe and what actually is. The question no one asks. When someone decides to quit pornography, they almost universally approach it the same way. They set a date. They delete their browser history. They install blocking software. They make promises to themselves, to God, to their partners. They read articles about dopamine and neuroplasticity. They join support groups. They count days. And then, usually within a week, sometimes within hours, they fail. The response to this failure is predictable. They assume they lack willpower. They assume they are broken. They assume they need to try harder, be stronger, exert more control. So they set another date. They make stricter rules. They add more blocking software. They make more promises. This cycle can continue for years, for decades. I have spoken with men who have been trying to quit for longer than some of their children have been alive. Here is what almost none of them ask. What if the entire framework is wrong? What if trying to quit pornography by exerting willpower over pornography is like trying to cure depression by simply deciding to be happy? What if the thing we are fighting is not actually the thing we need to address? In feudal Japan, there was a practice among certain swordsmen that seems strange to the modern mind. When they encountered an opponent they could not defeat through technique alone, they would not train harder at the same techniques. Instead, they would stop fighting entirely. They would retreat. They would sit in meditation. They would examine not their opponent, but themselves, their stance, their breathing, their relationship to the sword itself. They understood something profound. The problem was not external. The solution would not be found in the realm of action, but in the realm of understanding. This is the mistake. This is the mistake that 97% of people make. They try to defeat pornography in the realm of pornography. The architecture of misunderstanding. Let me tell you about a man named Kenji. This is not his real name, but his story is real. Kenji was a successful businessman in Tokyo. Married, 2 children. By every external measure, his life was ordered and productive. But for 15 years, he had been locked in a private war with pornography that was slowly hollowing him out from the inside. He had tried everything: therapy, medication, accountability software that sent reports to his wife, cold showers, exercise regimens, meditation apps. Nothing worked for more than a few weeks. The longest he had ever made it was 43 days, and when he relapsed after that streak, the shame was so crushing that he seriously contemplated suicide. What Kenji did not understand, what almost no one understands, is that he was trying to solve a problem that existed on one level by applying solutions from a completely different level. Imagine trying to cure a fever by applying ice to your forehead. The fever is not in your forehead. The fever is a systemic response to an infection somewhere else in your body. You can apply ice until you develop frostbite, and the fever will remain because you are addressing a symptom while ignoring the cause. Pornography is not the disease, pornography is the fever. But what is the infection? This is where it gets uncomfortable. This is where most people turn away because the real answer requires us to look at things we do not want to see. The anatomy of absence. In the Zen tradition, there is a teaching method called koan, a paradoxical question that cannot be answered through logical thinking. The most famous is perhaps what is the sound of one hand clapping. The point is not to find an answer. The point is to exhaust the rational mind until a deeper understanding can emerge. Here is a koan for the modern age. Why do we reach for something that makes us feel worse? Think about that carefully. Pornography does not make users feel good. Oh, there is a brief neurochemical spike, certainly, but that fades in seconds, and what remains? Shame, disgust, emptiness, a sense of having betrayed oneself. Users know this. They have experienced it hundreds or thousands of times, and yet they return. Why? The conventional answer is addiction. The brain has been hijacked. Neural pathways have been established. Dopamine receptors have been downregulated. This is all true in the same way it is true that water is made of hydrogen and oxygen. It is accurate but not illuminating. It describes the mechanism but not the meaning. Here is what I have learned from speaking with hundreds of people caught in this cycle and from my own years of struggle. We do not reach for pornography because it makes us feel good. We reach for it because it makes us feel something in a life where we have become numb to almost everything else. Let that settle for a moment. Pornography is not pursued for pleasure. It is pursued as proof of existence. It is pursued as evidence that we can still feel. It is pursued as a response to an absence so profound that we cannot even name it. The Japanese have another word, ma. It refers to the space between things, the pause between notes, the emptiness that gives form to fullness. In traditional Japanese aesthetics, ma is not empty space to be filled. It is sacred space that gives meaning to everything else. Modern life has eliminated ma. We have filled every pause with stimulation, every moment of potential boredom with distraction, every space of uncertainty with information. We have created lives of constant input with no time for processing, constant stimulation with no time for integration, constant noise with no time for silence. And in that absence of absence, in that elimination of sacred emptiness, something in us begins to starve. Pornography is not the hunger. Pornography is what we eat when we have forgotten what real nourishment feels like. The trap within the trap here is where the mistake compounds itself. When someone decides to quit pornography, they approach it as an additive problem. They think, I need to add willpower, I need to add accountability, I need to add blocking software and support groups and motivation. They are trying to fill the addiction-shaped hole with recovery-shaped activities. But the hole is not addiction-shaped. The hole existed before the addiction. The addiction is what formed around the hole, like a pearl forming around a grain of sand. The addiction is not the problem. It is the attempted solution to a problem we have not yet named. This is why willpower fails. This is why 97% of people make the same mistake. They are trying to remove the pearl without addressing the irritant that caused it. Let me tell you what happened with Kenji. After his near-suicide experience, he stopped trying to quit pornography. This sounds counterintuitive, I know, but he stopped. He stopped counting days. He stopped installing software. He stopped making promises. He stopped treating pornography as the enemy. Instead, he began to investigate the moment before. Not the moment of use, the moment before the urge even arose. He began to keep a journal, but not of his failures. He journaled about the specific texture of the moments that preceded his reaching for pornography. What he discovered shattered his entire understanding. The urge never arose from nowhere. It always came after moments of specific emotional experiences. But these were not what he expected. It was not after stress, though stress was sometimes present. It was not after sexual frustration, though that too sometimes appeared. It was after moments of disconnection, a conversation with his wife where they discussed logistics but not feelings, a success at work that no one truly acknowledged, a moment of looking at his children and feeling like a stranger in his own home, a sunrise he saw but did not feel. The urge for pornography was not coming from horniness or stress or boredom. It was coming from the accumulated weight of being present in his life but not truly alive in it. It was coming from the slow suffocation of living a life that looked perfect from the outside while feeling hollow from the inside. Pornography was not his escape from reality. It was his last remaining proof that he could still feel anything at all. The path that is not a path. In traditional Japanese archery Kyudo, the goal is not to hit the target. This confuses Westerners endlessly. How can the goal not be hitting the target? What else would it be? The goal is to become the kind of person who naturally hits the target. The goal is transformation of self, not achievement of outcome. This distinction is everything. When we try to quit pornography by focusing on not using pornography, we are trying to hit the target. We are operating in the realm of achievement, of willpower, of external control. And we fail over and over because we have not become the kind of person for whom pornography is no longer necessary. How does one become that kind of person? Not through addition, through subtraction, not through discipline, through attention, not through fighting, through understanding. Let me explain what this actually looks like, because this is not abstract philosophy. This is practical methodology that has worked for people who had failed at everything else. The first step is the hardest because it requires us to do something that feels like giving up. Stop trying to quit. I know how that sounds, but stay with me. When we are trying to quit, we are in a state of constant warfare with ourselves. Part of us wants to use pornography. Part of us wants to stop. These parts are in conflict, and that conflict itself is exhausting. It drains our energy. It occupies our mental space. It creates the very stress and depletion that make us vulnerable to relapse. The Japanese tea ceremony has a principle called Ichigo Ichie, one time, one meeting. Each tea ceremony is treated as a unique, unrepeatable event that will never happen again in exactly the same way. This creates a quality of attention that is impossible when we are focused on achieving a future state. When we are trying to quit pornography, we are not present. We are future-focused. We are oriented toward a goal. And in that future orientation, we miss the only moment in which actual change can occur. This one. So the first step is to release the goal. Not forever. Not as a final surrender, but for now. Right now. In this moment, you are not trying to quit pornography. You are simply paying attention to what is actually happening. The practice of presence. What does this attention look like? Kenji described it to me like this. When the urge arose, instead of fighting it or giving into it, he would stop everything and sit with it. He would not meditate on it or analyze it. He would simply observe it the way you might observe a weather system moving across the sky. Where did he feel it in his body? What was its texture? Did it have a color, a temperature, a shape? This sounds simple, but it is profoundly difficult. Because what he discovered is that the urge itself was not simple. It was layered. Underneath the surface urge was anxiety. Yet underneath the anxiety was loneliness. Underneath the loneliness was a grief he had been carrying since childhood. A grief about not being seen, not being known, not mattering. The pornography was never about sex. It was about temporarily escaping the weight of that unmetabolized grief. You cannot willpower your way out of grief. You cannot block software your way out of not feeling seen. You cannot accountability partner your way out of existential loneliness. These require something entirely different. They require acknowledgement. They require feeling. They require the very thing that pornography allows us to avoid: genuine presence with our actual experience. This is the work, not fighting the urge, not controlling the behavior, but developing the capacity to be present with whatever is actually happening inside us. In Zen monasteries, monks engage in a practice called shikantaza, just sitting. They sit in meditation not to achieve enlightenment, not to feel peaceful, not to have any particular experience. They sit to sit. They are present with whatever arises: boredom, pain, bliss, terror, nothing at all. This is the training. This is how we become the kind of person for whom pornography is no longer necessary. We learn to be present with discomfort without needing to escape it. We learn to feel loneliness without needing to medicate it. We learn to experience emptiness without needing to fill it. The paradox of healing here is the paradox that breaks most people's brains. The way to freedom from pornography is not through trying to be free from pornography. It is through being willing to fully experience the exact things that pornography has been protecting us from feeling. Most people hear this and think I am saying they should indulge in pornography. I am not. I am saying something far more radical, that the battle itself is the problem. When we are at war with our urges, we are fragmented, part of us against part of us. This fragmentation is itself a form of suffering that makes us vulnerable to any escape, including pornography. Integration, becoming whole, requires us to stop rejecting parts of ourselves. The urge is not the enemy. The urge is a messenger. It is information. It is trying to tell us something about what is missing, what hurts, what needs attention. Kenji told me that the turning point came when he stopped seeing the urge as an attack and started seeing it as a signal. When it arose, instead of panic or shame, he felt curiosity. Oh, he would think, what is this about? What happened today that made me feel unseen? What conversation did I avoid? What feeling did I bypass? Sometimes he could identify it immediately. Sometimes it took days. But the practice itself, the orientation toward understanding rather than control, changed everything. Because here is what happens. When you actually feel the grief, it moves through you. When you actually acknowledge the loneliness, it transforms. When you actually sit with the emptiness, you discover it is not actually empty. The Japanese concept of wabi-sabi celebrates imperfection, impermanence, and incompleteness. It finds beauty in the cracked pot, the weathered wood, the asymmetrical arrangement. It recognizes that wholeness does not mean flawless. It means integrated, including the broken parts. Recovery from pornography is not about becoming the person who never has urges. It is about becoming the person who has urges and does not need to act on them, because the urges no longer serve a function. The underlying needs have been addressed in healthier ways. The architecture of real recovery. So what does this actually look like in practice? What is the daily methodology of someone who approaches this correctly? First, they create space, literal space, time in their day with no input, no phone, no music, no podcast, no scrolling, just space. Even 5 minutes, this is sacred. This is where the work happens. In that space, they practice presence, not meditation in the formal sense necessarily. Just being with what is, feeling their body, noticing their breath, observing their thoughts without attaching to them. This is not relaxation. This is training in being present with reality without needing to modify it. Second, they develop awareness of their patterns, not to control them, but to understand them. They notice what time of day our urges strongest, what emotional states precede them, what situations trigger them. They become students of their own experience, This is not obsessive self-monitoring. This is compassionate investigation. Like a naturalist studying an ecosystem, they observe the conditions under which certain behaviors emerge. Third, they address the actual needs. This is the part most people skip, and it is the most important. If loneliness is driving the behavior, they must address loneliness not through distraction but through genuine connection. If the need to feel alive is driving it, they must find ways to actually feel alive through art, through nature, through risk, through creation. This is not replacement addiction. This is actually living. Pornography was keeping them from living. Now they must learn how. Fourth, they practice self-compassion. This is not self-indulgence. This is recognizing that shame is not a motivator. It is an accelerant. Shame makes everything worse. When they fail, and they will fail because this is not a linear process, they practice responding to themselves the way they would to a struggling friend. With kindness, with understanding, with encouragement to try again. The samurai had a saying, "Fall 7 times, stand up 8. But this misses the deeper point. The standing up is not the achievement. The standing up is just what you do. The achievement is becoming the kind of person who stands up not because they must, but because it is their nature." The deepening. There is a level beyond this that most people never reach, because reaching it requires going through everything I have described and coming out the other side. Kenji went through this process. It took him not days or weeks, but years. Real years of daily practice, years of failing and learning and failing again, years of slowly, incrementally becoming more present with himself. And then one day he realized something had shifted. He had gone months without using pornography, but more importantly, he had gone months without the desperate white-knuckled resistance that characterized all his previous attempts. He had not conquered the urge through force. The urge had simply quieted, like a radio station fading out as you drive away from the transmitter. What he discovered in that quietness was startling. He had spent so many years fighting pornography that he had never asked himself what he actually wanted his sexual life to be. Not what he should want, not what his wife wanted, not what society expected or religion prescribed. What did he, in his deepest truth, actually want? This is terrifying to ask because it requires honesty that might reveal uncomfortable things, but it is essential because we cannot build a life based on what we are running from. We can only build a sustainable life based on what we are running toward. For Kenji, the answer was surprising. He wanted intimacy, real intimacy, not just physical but emotional and spiritual. He wanted to be known by his wife and to know her. He wanted to feel alive in his body, not as an instrument of productivity but as a source of genuine pleasure and connection. These revelations led to difficult conversations, led to vulnerability he had been avoiding for years, led to changes in how he lived, how he worked, how he related to his family. The pornography had been anesthesia for a life that was slowly dying. Removing the anesthesia was necessary but not sufficient. He had to actually revive the life. The return to the world. There is a famous sequence in Zen Buddhism called the 10 ox herding pictures. It depicts the spiritual journey as a person searching for and taming an ox, representing the true self. The sequence shows the initial search, the discovery, the taming, the integration, and finally, after enlightenment, the return to the marketplace. The return is crucial. The journey is not about escaping the world. It is about returning to the world transformed, capable of being fully present in ordinary life. This is the final piece that most recovery frameworks miss. They treat recovery as an end point. I quit pornography, therefore I am recovered. But recovery is not an end point. It is a beginning. The question is not, how do I stop using pornography? The question is, who am I becoming and what life am I building? When someone truly addresses the underlying disconnection, the existential loneliness, the accumulated grief, the absence of genuine feeling in their life, when they do this deep work, they do not just stop using pornography. Their entire life changes. They start having real conversations instead of safe ones. They start making art or music or writing or whatever form of creation has been dormant in them. They start taking risks, feeling fear, experiencing aliveness. They start being present with their children in a way they never were. They start touching their partner with actual presence instead of routine. The pornography was keeping them from this life. But simply removing pornography does not give them this life. They must build it, actively, intentionally, daily. This is the work the 97% never do. They focus on the removal and never get to the building, the teaching and the struggle. I want to tell you one more thing about Kenji's story. After several years of this practice, after the real transformation had occurred, I asked him, "Do you regret the years of struggle? All those failures, all that shame, all that wasted time?" His answer surprised me. "No," he said, "I needed every bit of it. The struggle taught me things about myself that I could not have learned any other way. It broke me open. It forced me to look at parts of myself I would never have examined otherwise. The pornography itself was a problem, yes, but the journey away from it was the most important thing I have ever done. It was the doorway to becoming real." This is what the ancient traditions understood that we have forgotten. The obstacle is the path. The wound is where the light enters. The very thing we most want to escape from is often the teacher we most need. The mistake that 97% of people make is not just in how they approach quitting pornography. It is in seeing pornography as the problem to be eliminated rather than as the symptom of a deeper invitation. An invitation to wake up, to become present, to actually live the life they have been avoiding. When you understand this, everything changes. The urge stops being the enemy and becomes the alarm clock. The shame stops being evidence of brokenness and becomes evidence that you still know the difference between your true self and your false self. The struggle stops being something to win and becomes something to learn from. The path forward. So what do you do now reading this? How do you actually implement this understanding? You start where you are. Not where you wish you were, not where you think you should be. Where you actually are right now. If you used pornography this morning, you start there. If you have been clean for 90 days, you start there. If you are reading this while simultaneously fighting the urge to open another tab, you start there. Here is your first practice. For the next 24 hours, do not try to quit pornography. Take that entire struggle off the table. Instead, practice this one thing. Notice. When does the urge arise? What precedes it? What is the felt sense in your body? What emotion is present? What need is trying to get your attention? Just notice. Do not judge. Do not fix. Do not control. Notice. Write it down if that helps, or speak it aloud to yourself, or just mentally note it, but notice. This simple practice, this orientation toward understanding rather than control, is the seed of real transformation. Everything else grows from this. After 24 hours, do another 24, then another. Not as a streak to maintain, not as a goal to achieve, as a practice to deepen. Some days you will use pornography anyway. That is okay, that is expected, that is part of the process. When it happens, notice what preceded it. Notice how you feel after. Notice without shame, without judgment, just notice. This is not permissiveness. This is not making excuses. This is developing the muscle of awareness that makes real change possible. As you do this, you will start to see patterns. You will start to understand your own architecture. And from that understanding, you will know what actually needs to change. For some, it will be addressing loneliness through genuine connection. For others, it will be processing old trauma that has never been felt. For others, it will be leaving a job that is killing their spirit or having a difficult conversation that has been avoided for years. Or starting to create something that expresses who they actually are. The specific answer is unique to each person, but the method of finding it is universal. Presence, attention, compassion, and the willingness to feel what you have been avoiding. The ancient future. The ancient Japanese tea masters had a phrase, Ichigo Ichi-e, one time, one meeting. This moment, exactly as it is, will never come again. Right now, reading these words, you are in a unique moment of possibility. Not because you have found the answer, not because you now have the perfect plan, but because you have encountered a different way of seeing the problem. The 97% who fail are not weaker than you. They are not less intelligent. They are not less committed. They simply have not understood that they are trying to solve the wrong problem. You now understand. What you do with that understanding is up to you. But know this, the path away from pornography is not the path of more control, more willpower, more shame, more fighting. It is the path of more presence, more understanding, more compassion, more aliveness. It is the path of becoming real. And it is available to you right now, in this moment, regardless of how many times you have failed before. The question is not whether you can do it. The question is whether you are willing to do something different than what 97% of people do. Are you willing to stop fighting and start understanding? Are you willing to stop trying to remove the symptom and start addressing the cause? Are you willing to stop treating yourself as a problem to be solved and start treating yourself as a mystery to be known? If the answer is yes, then begin. Not tomorrow. Not after one more failure now. Notice what you are feeling right now. Notice what needs are present. Notice what you are avoiding. Notice what is real. This is the practice. This is the path. This is how the 97% become the 3%. Not through superior willpower. Through superior understanding. Not through being stronger. Through being wiser. Not through fighting harder. Through surrendering to what is actually true. Your next step. If this resonated with you, if you recognized yourself in these words, I want you to do something unusual. Do not share this article. Do not save it for later. Do not add it to your endless collection of things you mean to implement someday. Instead, close this window, put down your phone, and sit in silence for 5 minutes, just 5 minutes. Feel what you are actually feeling right now. Notice what is true beneath all the strategies and the shame and the goals. That is where the real work begins. That is where change becomes possible. The path is simple. It is just not easy. But neither is continuing to live the way you have been living. Choose differently, not tomorrow. Now, the door is open. Walk through it.